Reinforcement is anything that happens directly after a behavior, also called the consequence, that will increase the future occurrence of the behavior. Now this may sound tricky, but let's think about some examples. Let's consider teaching a child to say please. The child has a verbal history of making requests and does so effortlessly. We want to teach the child to say please. If the child gets what they want every time they say please, and they're not given anything if they don't, then they will probably say please more in the future. Somebody who has a job does the work and then gets a paycheck. Doing the job is the behavior, and getting paid is the reinforcement because it increases the future occurrence of the person doing the job. If you're hungry, you walk to the kitchen and make yourself a delicious sandwich, and you're no longer hungry. In the future, you'll remember this, and you'll make more sandwiches when you're hungry. Reinforcement is needed in functional communication training. We want our learners to use the methods we're teaching. We increase the future occurrence of behavior using reinforcement. Reinforcement will look different for different people. Even when considering edible reinforcers, some kids like sweets and others like savory or sour. We must find what our children want and what they'll work for. Then we will provide these items after they show the functional communication method. Let's talk a little more about the many ways to provide reinforcement. The amount of reinforcement and the quality of the reinforcement is essential to consider. Think about the paycheck example. Think about being paid in pretend money versus a real paycheck for quality. For quantity, think of getting $10 an hour at one job and $15 an hour for filling the same position with another company. Would you change and work at a company that paid $15? Many people would take this opportunity. We can gauge reinforcement by considering their value. People will work for strong reinforcement and are less likely to work for weak reinforcement. Suppose a child gets her favorite snack every day without showing behavior. In that case, she'll have no desire to show the behavior. Why would she? She's already getting what she wants. Now let's say the girl is only given her favorite treat when she sets the dinner table. The likelihood of her setting the table will increase because now the reinforcer is valuable. Reinforcers may be artificial or natural. Artificial reinforcers may be anything the child likes enough to work for. Examples may be a child receiving a sticker for saying excuse me, an allowance for doing chores, or a child receiving their favorite meal for a good grade. These things would not occur naturally. Natural reinforcers are what naturally happens after the behavior. For example, a boy burps and his peers laugh. The boy loves attention and does the behavior more in the future. A girl goes for a run every day for a week and loses 5 pounds. She keeps running to meet her weight goal. Drinking water when you're thirsty and eating food when you're hungry is natural reinforcement. Parents and teachers should begin by giving the least reinforcement to meet their child's needs. You wouldn't give your child $20 for doing the dishes if you didn't have to. As a parent and teacher, you want to give your child the smallest amount of reinforcement possible for them to still do the work. Now this isn't to be mean, it's actually quite the latter. Our goal is to have our children use behaviors to meet their needs without giving them something for it. In the real world, children will only get a bonus sometimes when they make a request. It's more natural for a child to make a request and be given the item with no additional reinforcement. We must only embellish the reinforcement tied to behaviors if it's necessary. This will only be necessary if the child refuses to perform the behavior or if the behavior needs to change very quickly. If you're trying to control a dangerous behavior or your child isn't motivated enough through reinforcement, you may need to use a high-strength reinforcer. Examples may be a child who refuses to do anything and shows no interest in earning reinforcement. It would help if you found a high enough reinforcer so they will want to perform the task. An example of a high-level reinforcer may be their favorite treat or a new toy. This may also be 15 minutes of playing their favorite game on their iPad. An example of a low-level reinforcer may be a medium preference snack or activity. If you have a child with highly aggressive behaviors, you'll want to start with a high-level reinforcer to get them to stop the aggression. The reinforcer must be so good that they'll stop their extreme behavior to get it. We'll always use natural reinforcement with our children. Therefore, we first find the function of their behavior. Each time the child performs the functional communication training response, we'll automatically provide them with what they need or want. Examples include allowing a child to watch TV when they request it with their device, giving a child a snack when they request it using a visual, and allowing a child to leave the dinner table when they sign "all done." Sometimes more than natural reinforcement is needed. The child might not work for the natural reinforcement alone and may need an extra reinforcer to help them learn to use FCT. Another example of natural reinforcement in meeting the child's needs is required, maybe due to the environment. This happens when the natural reinforcement in the environment may be strong and overpower your reinforcer. Consider a classroom with many children. Assume one child wants attention from his peers. He's told that if he uses his FCT break card to request a break, he can bring a peer to play basketball at the end of the day. Throughout the day, the students swear, burp, and tell loud jokes in class. The student's peers laugh each time loudly. The child is getting more attention from the natural reinforcement of his laughing peers than the reinforcement of playing basketball. As a parent using functional communication training, beware of any natural reinforcers that may compete with your reinforcement. Begin by giving your child what they want every time they use the FCT response. This may be attention, escape sensory items, or access to things or activities. Do not give the child what they want if they simultaneously use the FCT response and challenging behavior. This would confuse your child. Considering the never-ending responsibilities of parents, this may be hard and exhausting. If the child does not receive reinforcement for each FCT instance, they may not connect the response with the reinforcement. The learning process may take even more time if you miss opportunities to provide reinforcement. Knowing when it's time to reduce your reinforcement is also essential. You only want to sometimes give your child attention every time they hold up a card. As educators and parents, we want our children to be satisfied when they receive what they request and nothing more. This is known as natural reinforcement. When the child's mastered using the FCT response, it's time to reduce the reinforcement. You'll know your child has learned the FCT response if they perform the behavior with the least amount of prompt possible with no challenging behaviors. You'll choose a criterion, such as 8 consecutive times in a row. You will use a cue to let your child know the reinforcement is coming. This will help them to wait. One way to reduce reinforcement is through time delay. Every time the child uses the FCT response, wait for 1 second or more, depending on your child, and increase this time over learning opportunities. You can teach your child to finish a task before reinforcement. For example, if your child is making the bed and asks for a break, systematically have the child do more of the job before taking a break. The child has pulled up the fitted sheet and asks for a break. You give the child a cue that reinforcement is coming and to wait. The child then puts on the top sheet and gets reinforcement. The next time, the child will be expected to complete the fitted sheet and top sheet and put the pillows on the bed before getting reinforcement. Another strategy is to teach them to ask for other preferred reinforcers if the desired reinforcer is unavailable. One typical example is when the child wants attention, but the parent is busy doing something else. You can teach your child to request an activity or item while waiting for their parent. Collecting data throughout the entire process of using functional communication training is crucial. You'll want to see if the challenging behavior decreases and the FCT response increases. This response will show that the training is working. The child is using communication to meet their needs instead of challenging behavior. For example, if a child screams whenever they do not have their favorite stuffed bunny. The child's parents have taught the child to sign bunny to request the bunny. The parents have used FCT and collected data. The child no longer screams and cries when they do not have the bunny and is asking for the bunny using sign language. This shows the FCT is working. The procedure for setting up data collection involves a few steps. First, think about how you'll teach the FCT response. Will you use natural or artificial learning opportunities? Using natural practice opportunities, have data collection materials ready at those times and locations. If you use artificial learning opportunities, set up what you'll need in the environment and have your data systems ready. For example, in the case study for Paul, his dad knows that 3 times a day, Paul will practice FCT because these are the times that Paul takes his medication. Paul's dad will be ready with data collection materials during these times. For the child to practice while brushing their teeth, the mom must have materials ready whenever she decides to have the child brush her teeth and practice FCT. First, write the problem behavior and the replacement behavior FCT response on the data sheet. This will remind you of what you want to see decrease and the response you want to see increase. Each time you practice, write the prompt used and the communication partner, which could be yourself, your partner, your other child, your parent, and more. Write the antecedent. Remember that this is what happens just before the behavior occurs. Some examples might be asking the child to make their bed, brush their teeth, or eat their vegetables. After the behavior occurs, code if the problem behavior or replacement behavior occurred. Write a tally mark for all behaviors that arise, even if both occur. Remember to ignore the problem behaviors even if they happen with the FC response. For example, if the child screams and then says, "I want a cookie," Have the child restate the FC response so you don't accidentally reinforce screaming. Here we have an example of a data collection sheet. The functional communications goal, procedure, problem behavior, and replacement behavior are written across the top. This data sheet has a column for the date on the left-hand side. If you have multiple practice opportunities within the same day, you'll use a new row for each practice opportunity. This may look like 3 rows that contain different times on the same date. It's essential to capture all your data so you can find patterns. You'll also write who the communication partner is. This will help you know when it's time to practice behavior with new people. For example, suppose Sally uses her device to request mastery with her mom. In that case, she should work with new partners. We may see a significant decrease in FC behavior, and this is okay, it just shows that more practice is needed. You'll write all your antecedents per behavior. We will code if the problem behavior, as defined on the top of the sheet, or the replacement behavior, as defined on the sheet, occurs. Also be sure to write the level of prompt you used with your child. A code key is at the bottom of the data sheet provided. Remember, you want to reduce the level of prompting as the child learns, so this step is significant. Make sure to prompt your child to use functional communication using the level of prompting necessary for success. Lastly, write what happened after the behavior occurred. Did the child access reinforcement? When your child uses the FCT response, provide immediate praise and meet their request. For example, you can say, "Great job asking for chocolate milk. Here you go," and immediately give them a glass of milk. When your child reaches proficiency, meaning they're always doing the replacement communication instead of the problem behavior, you can reduce your level of prompting. If a child is consistently and independently using their FCT responses, they are determined to be proficient. Make sure you look at your data to see what's happening. If functional communication increases and problem behavior decreases, then FCT is working. If you don't see this result, consider the following. Did you run the program as planned? Did you miss any steps? Did you determine the function of behavior before implementing training? Does functional communication result in the same level or more significant reinforcement? Does everyone in the child's life consistently use FC across settings?